Scott Frost has been on the job over 3 months, but is he making progress in high school recruiting?
You are Locked On UCF, your daily podcast on the UCF Knights, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on into Locked On UCF, your daily UCF podcast. I'm your host, Mike G, and thank you so much for making Locked On UCF your first listen of every day. Joining me is recruiting expert Brian Smith for Locked On the Portal. Brian, Scott Frost is the head coach. I haven't had a chance to talk to you yet. I've seen you at recruiting events. We've chopped it up. I want to thank you for joining me today. But I got to get your thoughts before we dovetail into recruiting. How do you feel about the Scott Frost hire? There was a lot of enthusiasm about the nostalgia of him coming back to Orlando, the architect of the undefeated season. He did a lot of great things the first go around. UCF decided to reach back to that well to bring him back to try to fix what is broken in Orlando. You know, how did you feel about the hire?
When I first heard it, I was like, okay, he at least knows the school. He had success there. They've always been known for throwing the ball around. He played quarterback. He orchestrated that offense. This should be okay. The key is, as always, who do you hire on your staff, etc. And as long as you start fast, you'll be fine. Well, as we'll talk about in a second, recruiting I'm a little concerned about. But the staff, they got D'Onofrio, they got some other guys on the staff that have experience. I think it's pretty good there. I just need to see how spring goes to feel good about everything. Let's see if they get any more transfers after the spring window. And it still is the part about recruiting I'm a little iffy because they don't have enough momentum, but the name and all those things aligned. So I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, look, you obviously pay close attention to the kids in the portal. Maybe there's a feeling that, that this thing will be rebuilt, at least in the short term, through the portal until you can establish strong high school recruiting. You know, like I know, your high school recruiting is really judged in years like 3 and 4 once those kids have had a chance to be in the program. But every coach I've talked to says the way to build a long-term sustainable winner is still through strong high school recruiting. You've been out there, man. You talk to high school coaches. You've been at these events. You've been at recruiting events. And before we started recording, you mentioned it doesn't seem as if UCF is making headway with high school 4 and 5-star recruits.
Yeah, I go to like all the Under Armour events. I went to Battle Miami. It's the biggest 7-on event of the year in January. It was in Orlando, Under Armour, IMG, Miami, etc. They're mentioned a little bit, but the elite kids not as much. And what I found interesting, Mike, they got 2 linebackers committed. They're both really good. They're both underrated. UCF has always found those guys, especially the kid from down in South Florida. The kid can fly. Like he fits the era that Scott built. A little bit undersized, but can fly. Well, that's great. But where are the offensive guys? They don't have a quarterback committed yet, which, you get a quarterback early. That helps your recruiting. And there's this concern about it. I was looking at their official visit list. There's some good players on it. But in a year where, all this enthusiasm should be behind Scott. Again, I thought the hire was pretty good. I don't see that. And I'm kind of puzzled by it. They hired Jairus McIntyre, back office guy from Tampa Catholic. Like they got the right people, but it has not come together yet. Maybe I'm just impatient, which typically I am, and it's March, but I wanted to see more visits lined up by this point and more commitments. Again, they got 2 guys committed. Both are linebackers. That's okay. I mean, state of Florida is famous for those kind of guys, but no offensive guys has me concerned. And I don't see enough elite kids on the list. I mean, they got Alex Willis and some other guys on the official visit list. He's a really good player from First Academy in Orlando. D lineman that's got offers from a ton of schools, but there's not enough bulk. And I'm not saying they're going to recruit suddenly like Miami circa 1999 to 2004 or something.
Right.
But still, there has to be a happy medium, and I'm not seeing that. And I'm puzzled by it because the people they have on staff and stuff, it doesn't seem to fit. So color me as one that's a little skeptical right now.
Yeah, could it be just about not having proof of concept, though? After that first year they get in the books, Brian, where you show proof of concept on about what you're trying to do offensively. The game has changed offensively since the last time that Scott Frost was the head coach at UCF, and kids want to know that your system works today. And without that at UCF, could that be hindering, some of these kids in your conversations?
I wouldn't doubt it. Now, let's be honest, Nebraska, when he went back to his alma mater, that just never got off the ground. They were never a team that went to do anything. And I think people are a little skeptical because of that. And I get it. But I mean, the offenses they had, ironically, with McKenzie, Milton as his quarterback now on staff, they just slaughtered people. So I thought there would be a little more enthusiasm just based on that. Milton's a really popular guy around UCF. And I thought he'd be a heck of a recruiter. Let's see if that kind of comes into fruition, like you were saying, after this year. But you can't take recruiting classes off and it end well for you. I mean, you can only rely on transfers so much. As an example, Florida State really relied on transfers, and for a little while they hit the home run. But when that came to an end, that was a train hitting a wall. That was a massive collision that's called 2 and 10. You can't rely on that, especially in the trenches, and it go well. You've got to recruit out of the high school ranks. We see it at the elite SEC level. Do you think Kirby really relies on it? You think Nick relied on, you know what I mean? Like, there's a reason they were successful. They get the elite high school kids. There's continuity, cohesiveness. And I'm sure Scott wants to get to that point, but I haven't seen it yet. So 2 things. We always talk about this in recruiting. Follow the visits and relationships. Who does UCF get on campus this spring? I mean, it's such a central located. When you're in Orlando, it's about as good as it gets. Secondarily, which guys on the staff? D'Onofrio's done a really good job. They got a bunch of linebackers lined up for visits. He can recruit. Who else gets guys on campus this spring? Because they got to find a way to build up, because they were a solid team last year, but they weren't world beaters by any means. They lost their star running back, etc. Who's going to be that star? They need some kind of glitz, some kind of glamour from spring to help bring in more kids for visits. And it's a storyline to follow. This is really, really important over the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah, I agree. Look, you said you spit a bar there. You can't take recruiting classes off. You've got to recruit, and it's the job that never stops in college football. It is a big time. It's recruiting is the lifeblood of your program. Now, with the portal, there's an idea that you can kind of shift some of that lifting over to the portal if you can evaluate and get guys to high-level guys to commit. But you're not doing that without money, Brian. Like, the portal is a money game these days.
Well, you put it in a very nice way to say it in that, even though you're blunt. Money talks, brother. In any industry, and NIL right now drives me nuts. People ask me all the time when I go on these shows, Brian, where do you think said recruit's going? And I'll say, well, it depends on which offer he gets from which school. And people get mad because fans look at it from a linear perspective. They root for the logo.
Yeah.
The kid roots for himself. The parent roots for the kid. And it's a really not much different than free agency in the National Football League. I know that makes a lot of people mad, but it's true. How well the NIL goes for UCF, I have 2 questions. Do they have money to go in on a 5-star kid if they wanted to go that route? If they do you go ahead and deliver it? And B, is this more a play for high school kids, or are they going to this year try to use a little more in the portal? Remember now, there is a spring window. I'm not sure what kind of shape the roster's in like you are with UCF. They may be looking to spend a little more on that. There's a 10-day window, mid to late April. They might want to get busy right after spring ball. I could be wrong, but it depends on what your holes are too. Still, though, I'm a little concerned about recruiting right now, regardless. And I might play a part in that, too.
Well, you got to use all that, and you've got to find a way to get to top 4 in the conference in recruiting. I think if you want to compete consistently, we'll talk about UCF's chances of getting to top 4 in recruiting right after a quick word from our sponsors. This episode of Locked On UCF is brought to you by our friends at TurboTax. Tax season, it was waiting and wondering if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting and wondering and worrying some more. Now Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, and everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. This is Taxes. Get an expert at turbotax.com. Now, only available with TurboTax live full service, real-time updates only in the iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at turbotax.com/guarantees. Brian, they've got to get the top 4 in recruiting. They've got to do it. They've got to figure out a way to beat out their peers in the conference. Look, Arizona State was picked to finish last in the Big 12.
Crazy,
they won the whole thing. And they had one of the most exciting college football playoff games we've seen. Ultimately, I think what we saw in that playoff game is recruiting wins. Because Quinn Ewers came through at the end, and he made the last play that Texas needed to beat them. And while Arizona State is a great story, what they did last year, I think, is not sustainable without consistent high school recruiting. If you're UCF, what's the path to top 4 in the conference, recruiting over BYU, where they've got tons of money there, right? Recruiting over Colorado, where Dion is got the glitz and the glam, and he's got the focus on his program. How do you do it if you're UCF?
First off, they've got to continue to do really good with the surrounding Orlando area. That's the one thing I feel comfortable with. The schools like Ocoee and West Orange and Cocoa and Melbourne Central Catholic, etc. Anything with an hour and a half of campus, they can't miss. Especially if UF or Florida State, etc., doesn't want a kid or gets in on them late. UCF has to be in on kids when they're freshmen and sophomores. This is the long game. With that being stated, the other key, like Gus did this when he was at UCF, and I assume Scott will too, North Florida, South Georgia, South Alabama, some of the kids in the rural schools, they're not recruited as much. Gus made a living off those kids when he was at UCF. They're going to have to hit some of those. But the other part, again, it comes back to something you mentioned towards the end of the last segment, NIL. I don't know how much they're going to go in on that, because if they want to take another step up, they're probably going to have to find a way to be really selective when they do it, get the kids that they want, and kind of build the program that way. It's really hard because everybody has an opinion about which kid should get more and all that. That's politics I don't have any interest in, but they need to keep the kids home and steal a few. But again, they're in Florida, man. Like, don't make it too complicated. Gus used to talk about this all the time. We want to recruit with an hour and a half of our campus mostly. And I'm like, yeah, that honestly makes a lot of sense because it's loaded. Yeah. You're less than 2 hours from all kinds of stuff.
Okay, but here, Florida is easily top 5 hotbed recruiting states in the country, right? I would say up there, California, Texas, Alabama, Georgia, and Florida. Agreed? Like, those are probably – name me 5 states that have more high school talent than those 5. And Florida, man, if you think back to the early 2000s, they were known for speed, producing kids with speed, man. Everybody who ran a 4.4 or better was going to Florida State. They were going to in-state schools in Florida. And I think if you're UCF, you've got to take advantage, like you said, of recruiting your backyard.
Yeah, and I think they're doing that a little bit with some of the under-the-radar kids. And the last time Scott was there, they did a tremendous job of finding a few guys that were kind of under the radar in that role. Like, I'll give you an example, looking at it this year, just one of the kids, they have an official visit lined up. A kid from Neptune Beach, which is basically Jacksonville. He's at Fletcher. He's a long and athletic corner that's a little bit underrated. They got him coming in for an OB. I've seen that kid play. His name's Elijah Keys. Okay, if you can get those kids consistently, that's great. But can you consistently do that, though? Like, that's not a lock. And where are the receivers and running backs and whatnot? Because they're in this state. I've seen them. I went to all 3 of the Under Armour camps. There's a ton of them. Prince Jean, a kid from Valdosta, South Georgia, another kid like that. That's 15 minutes over the border into Georgia. They need those kids, the speed guys that you're talking about. I just need to see them line up the visits because Scott's going to spread it out. He's going to throw it around. And again, the guy that ran the program, McKenzie Milton, is now on your staff. So it shouldn't be that hard to sell. I just want to see those visits happen this spring and then those matriculate into OBs over the late spring and summer.
Yeah, look, you start to win games, and this starts to come together for you if you're Scott Frost. So no matter what, you've got to find a way to put together a team that can do what last year's team couldn't do, and that's score points. Look, they went to their 4th-string quarterback last year, Brian, and nobody got hurt. You bet the farm on J. Jefferson, you benched it. DeCurry Brown couldn't get it done. E.J. Colson, too young for the job, right? Dylan Risk, 4th-string, the guy had taken a 1st-string snap all year, but suddenly, at the end of the BYU game, he's your quarterback. So in my book, I'm looking at what they did, and I'm just thinking, all right, well, you got to go get a quarterback. Well, you got Taven Jackson from the portal, but as you noted, no high school quarterbacks committed just yet. So I think your focus has to be there in fixing this offense, through recruiting.
Yeah, if they don't get somebody fairly soon, it will hinder the offense. What 2 positions are more connected than wide receiver and quarterback? They need receivers. You just talked about the offense struggling last year. They didn't create enough big plays in the passing game. Running back certainly wasn't a problem. I mean, that guy's a dude. He's going to be I think he'll start in the NFL. They need to find somebody to help replace him, but they're going to spread it out. It's going to be a different kind of offense. It's going to be more attacking through the air with Scott at the controls. I need to see that quarterback come in. I thought they would have more opportunities with QBs, and I'd start seeing some names, a lot of names. I haven't seen that yet, and maybe it's just because I don't cover UCF anymore. But at the same time, that's my concern. They need some explosiveness. They need some pizzazz, quarterback, running back, receiver, even a flex tight end. They need somebody to commit to kind of get that ball rolling. They don't have an offensive commitment right now, Mike. That is hard to believe. Not a single offensive commitment. It's mid-March, brother. It's time. Scott played quarterback. I mean, I remember his recruitment. He was a national recruit and all that. And he's been a guy that's a legend at UCF. So I'm very, very surprised they haven't got that done. So if you want to be top 4, they're going to need to get on the trail and really do some stuff this spring during the May evaluation period to kind of close that gap a little bit. But again, this is a very important next 2-3 weeks with these unofficial visits coming to Orlando for practices. It shouldn't be that hard to get kids to come there. I mean, it's Orlando. If they can't do that, it will not go well in June and July.
Well, look, building a winner next year might be about finding under the radar recruits that may surprise some people. We're going to talk about who are the guys to watch in the state of Florida right after a quick word from our sponsors. This episode of Locked On UCF is brought to you by our friends at Factor. Visit factor.com if you're looking to optimize your nutrition this year. Factor makes eating well easy with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved meals that are fresh, never frozen, and ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes. I love how Factor takes the stress out of meal planning. I recently tried their Protein Plus meals, and they were packed with flavor. It kept me full throughout the day. The convenience is unbeatable. No prep, no mess, just great food in minutes. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/lockedoncollege for 50% off and use code LOCKEDONCollege to make sure you get that discount off your first box plus free shipping. That's code LOCKEDONCollege. 50 off at factormeals.com/lockedoncollege to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Who are the under radar recruits? Who are the guys, right? Again, you are all over the state of Florida all the time. My brother, you're on the road so much. I do not envy how much you on the road. But you're doing the Lord's work, talking to recruits, figuring out what's important, figuring out where their heads are at, and figuring out who is a guy who maybe the Star Services have missed that could come in for Scott Frost and do a great job here early in his tenure. Tell me, who should we be watching?
Man, I'm hoping they get in. Let's start in and move our way out. Orlando Jones. It's right down the road from UCF. There's multiple kids there, but I just want to use this as an example. Larry Miles is a kid that's finally starting to blow up. Miami's going after him now. He's a receiver that just tore it up at Miami, Under Armour. You got to keep some of those kids home. Jones High School just being one. But any of the public schools, Olympic, you got to get kids from Dr. Phillips, any of those guys, Ocoee, all of those guys. But just in general, this is just some of the kids that I've got. I've almost got my list completed right now for my top 100 or whatever you want to go with around the state of Florida. Julius Miles is a kid. He's a basketball guy, kind of fits UCF, a kid that's kind of under the radar from Freeport, up in the Panhandle, a 6'6", 210 kid. Somebody like him, Javar Bowden, kid, Panama City Bay, another kid that's really athletic. He was at Under Armour Orlando. Everybody's recruiting him. He's 6'6", 190 pounds. Like, they need some of these receivers, in particular, Brandon Bennett, the kid that's from American Heritage who can fly. He's sub 10.4. You talked about speed earlier. If you're sub 10.4, brother, we can talk. I wouldn't be shocked if he one day just decided just to go track. He's that kind of athlete. Dominic Turnbull, he's from True North Classic in South Florida, the 6'1" corner. Doesn't get a lot of love because he's not at Miami Northwestern. He's not at IMG, etc. Florida is full of track kids like this that just kind of get overlooked. And the other kid, Danny Odom, he's originally from the Pittsburgh area, First Academy in Orlando. That's a kid that may end up back at Penn State or something. Can you keep him home? That's another school. Like, the most talented team in Orlando this year will be First Academy probably. You need to keep some of those guys around. There are a gazillion track kids, just like you were talking about, that are close to UCF in some capacity, and all of them are in Florida. Any of those kids come, they would be doing well. I don't care what their recruiting ranking is. I could give no concern because I know what they can do based on their film and seeing them live. So UCF would be fine if they can just keep churning out the kids in state.
Yeah, look, if you can develop, you can get some 3-star kids that are not on other people's radars, and you can get them in your program and you can shock the world. Look, Brian, like I know, the NFL is full of all-stars that were 3-star recruits in high school. So it's not always about that top end star. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Like, I mean, it's just the game, and people missing the evaluation of these kids all the time. So thank you so much for giving us an update on who to watch, maybe that's flying under the radar. We want to make sure that those kids get their notice here on Locked On UCF. Thank you so much for joining me, man. Before we get out of here, tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, man, the Portal Podcast. It's the new podcast on the Locked On Network. Transfer portal, NIL, and especially recruiting every day on the Portal Podcast. All the platforms, just like you can find Locked On UCF, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, you can find the Portal.
That's it for another great edition of Locked On UCF. Thank you for making us your first listen of every day. For your next listen, go check out our friends at Locked On Big 12. I got Dre Toll. Pulls no punches when it comes to talking about every team in the Big 12, including the UCF Knights. You can find Locked On Big 12 on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can find us here tomorrow on Locked On UCF.